All right, we are live, back with another What Legacy stream. And this one is going to be super fun because Alex here, our CTO at Uniform, has made a really big Miro board that I have not seen. And it's all about going from monolith to composable and all the tricks of the trade that you need to actually do that. And he just told me he might quiz me. And now I don't know what to do. But maybe just put it on. And before we move on, so Alex, do you want to quickly introduce yourself, just so everybody knows who you are, what we're doing?
Yes. Hi, Tim, and good morning, good day, good evening, afternoon to everybody. My name is Alex Shiba. I'm co-founder, CTO of Uniform. Prior to that, I spent 13 years at Sitecore doing various technical things. And I'm passionate about fast web, modern front-end tooling, and edge computing. I think that will sum up my recent passions. But besides that, passionate about building great teams and shipping things. So that
All
I
the
think
things, basically.
all the things. That's a completely unprepared intro.
I like that because this edge thing is bigger than everybody thinks. And so
Oh
we
yeah,
might even see some more of that today.
absolutely. And my
Right.
apology for my voice. It's going to be going on and off a little bit, but hopefully it gets better with time. We'll see.
Yeah, more use should be all right, depending on how hard we go today, though. All right. So migration tactics for monolith to composable. To me, that sounds like a lot of different things, edging from tech to politics. So, what direction are we going in?
Yeah, we definitely need to scope this, and this is really intended to be applied to CMS and DXP landscape.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, so that's, and we're probably gonna scratch the surface and hopefully go a little bit below the surface. That's the intent. Go keep this a little bit more conversational. We have quite a few topics to think about, talk about, and I think we can lean in on our collective experience, Tim, in this space, probably over
Yeah.
25 years if we combine the years together. And
Between us, now we know why we feel old based on this.
yes, that's
Well,
I
I'm not
know.
sure. I won't speak for you. I'll only speak for me about that.
So
Right.
yeah, and this is in a series of our What Legacy live streams, which is intended to challenge this preconceived notion of legacy and that you stuck with legacy, and we kind of want to talk about what to do with the investments of the prior decade and how do we kind of combine in the power of modern front end and edge innovations and the existing investments, realizing that it may not be an option to completely switch overnight to modern headless composable. So, what do we do with billions of dollars of investments, right, and
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of folks that have this niche specialization, whether it's AEM, Sitecore, Optimizely, whatnot. So that's kind of
WordPress.
is it
That's the
WordPress.
thing. Yeah. By the way, just to quickly interject here, we have quite a lot of people watching. So, what I want you to do, everybody who's watching, if you agree or disagree, just let us know because this is going to be one of those. I'm not sure how polarizing it will be, but we have certain ideas that we think are awesome, right? And we've done this for a long time. But if you don't agree because you come from a different context, feel free to just put that in the chat, and we're totally happy to go over that with you. And if we're wrong, we'll learn something as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the reminder. We do need to know if this makes any sense. Does this track?
Exactly.
And what kind of other topics would you like to for us to cover in this realm? This is a second live stream. We did one about kind of ultimate makeover of existing Seiko solution, and we kind of turn it instantly headless. If you haven't seen this one, check it out. This one gonna build on top of that, and we're gonna go a little bit deeper and a little bit wider. But you can see the emerging theme here happening, and we're gonna be talking about CMS DXPs here. If this is a foreign concept to you, you haven't heard about it, you probably tune in into the wrong channel about different sort of uniforms. But if you're interested to learn, we
We've had
welcome everybody.
lovely comments in live streams from people trying to sell us like school uniforms and stuff. This is
Oh
like
yeah,
the stuff that makes me so happy when that happens. Anyway, a
me
quick
too.
notice. I just realized that if you ask, oh,
Was that him?
sorry, something went wrong with the internet there. I think we're good again.
Okay, I didn't have any blips or anything.
Oh, okay, I did. I wanted to say, it looks like if you put a comment in our LinkedIn stream, it might not reach us here in this stream. So once in a while, I'll be going there, and if there's a comment, I'll answer. And so the first one was a question about. Let me just quickly check it before we continue. Let's see. Yeah. So essentially, um, is this a general migration strategy for all things monolith? It's like monolith commerce engine or a specific monolith CMS to DXP? I
Yeah,
think we can probably
I'm
think it's quite
surprised.
wide ranging, right?
I think the concepts intersect a lot, but composable commerce is a very different beast. So our
Yes.
specialty is within CMSDXP, so we'll talk about that use case.
Yeah.
But I do have in the plans there for later to get into commerce conversations, but bring somebody who's done this for a decade, and we can talk about that and expand this topic.
Yeah.
That being said, from what I've picked up in recent couple of years about that problem, there's a lot of similarities, and I think the patterns and practices of architecture back in the day, they apply universally whether you're building a big commerce suite or CMS or DXP.
Exactly. I do know that the person that wrote this comment is in the telco industry, so they do have their own set of challenges that we might
Oh,
not know
no,
anything about.
absolutely, absolutely.
But having spoken to him for a long time, it's very interesting to hear all those things. But feel free to just comment away, and then we'll just chug on with this and see what comes up.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so Tim, as a first question for you, I cherry picked a few DXPs from analyst website here, and
All
I have a
right.
definition. I have a logo quiz, a couple logos. Do you know what the logo of this company is?
Is that Bloomreach?
You got it. You got it. Nice, nice. Okay, everything else is easy. How about this one?
Oh,
Uh-huh.
oh. Let me think. Magnolia?
You got it. All right.
How about that?
That was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's a new logo for them, so I had to really dig deep.
Oh, we did, and that's expected. So we're gonna talk about DXPs and kind of intersection CMS and DXPs because CMS have not enough blocks to talk about monolith, but DXPs do. Um, and kind of going back, I realized we started talking about this. We started thinking about it 2018, 19, but we
Yeah.
really started talking about it in early 2020, where Gemstec was all the rage, and this was sort of our take on combining these two worlds of modern front-end development, offloading websites to CDN with static site generation. Remember, this was the thing
I used this
in the existing
slide
world.
to death in every presentation. I made animations on it, all of it. Yeah, exactly.
So the concept here is essentially you have a multi-vendor system here where every block, whether CMS, DAM, you would use another product from another company, and you put it all together in your own stack, and you're becoming chef of your own stack. So it's not a new topic. We've been talking about it for a while, and it's been over 3 years, and it makes
Yeah.
me feel even older. But before we go too deep, I think starting with why is important, and talk a little bit about why would you want to slice the monolith, decompose the monolith, or move to composable, right? So this is the monolith you dealing with. This is a live
It's
picture from a
hilarious. Like,
desert in Utah somewhere. Do you know this story, Tim?
yeah, well, I know about the monolith on the left that it somehow appeared
Nobody
by
knows
magic, but then
how.
the one on the right that beats me. It sounds fun. It looks fun.
Yeah, there's a couple of dudes had to disassemble it. That must have been a fun project.
I kind of want to know how they did that. Like, was it in the ground or was there like literally screws? So because some dude, like a farmer, put it there.
No idea, but there's a couple of articles if you're interested to find out. I've recently learned about it because I kind of skipped that news, but yeah. So that that is sort of what we're dealing here with. But in the software realms, you have this big block of software that's doing a lot of things, including handling your content, handling your search, probably handling your presentation experience layer, which we'll talk about. You likely build some forms or use some forms module on top of your CMSDXP. You likely ended up building a bunch of custom APIs because we used to treat CMSDXP as sort of application platform back in the day. And
Yeah, for sure.
I bet, I bet Tim, you built a couple of APIs yourself. I know
Oh man.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, because this is the thing. You have this kind of home base where things happen because you run the server, right? So put it.
Yeah.
And some of these systems were really good. Like Sidecore had this whole pipeline thing where you can just put in something and build your whole own thing. And that's in that sense was quite composable and it worked really well. And so why not do it in there, right? You have gone down this rabbit hole anyway, so why not?
It was too easy because you have content there to store some of your configs,
Exactly.
right? And it was the thing to do, and
And yeah, exactly.
that kind
W-
of got us partially in situation where we're in, where everything becomes kind of too coupled.
Yeah.
And I've seen commerce systems like shopping cart implemented on top of CMS, just
Oh
as a
yeah, me
hosting
too.
runtime execution environment.
And then
And
of
yeah,
these crazy things like a whole dictionary with like a million items, database rows, with one word is that, but then the key then you add like a one or underscore final, and then you have another one, and it's through littered throughout everything you've built, and so it's in that sense it's the least composable again, right? So
yeah,
you use the composability of an internal system to make something completely glued.
yeah, exactly. And what makes things worse is that you have this BLV thing on top. Uh, that's another question. What do you think BLV stands for? Not by
BLV.
Louis Vuitton. Not that, but something else.
I wish I knew, but build your. I know. I'm not going to try because I'm only thinking about BLT because it's almost lunch and almost dinner. But
There we
no,
go. It's
tell me.
big legacy vendor.
Aha! Of course.
So of course you have the whole box comes in a package from one company, and I mean there's pros and cons. You have one paper to sign, one throat to choke, as I hate that phrase, but that's used in
But it's
business
pretty
context.
cool. You can just overwhelm their professional services because something doesn't work. I have certainly done that in my time. Something's up. Yeah, you guys told me I could customize this. Now I did, and now you have to fix it. It was pretty nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, it makes certain things quite easy.
They were very unhappy because we customized the heck out of it, right?
Yeah. And as we know in technology, it's all about options and choices, right? So
Yeah.
pros and cons everywhere. This is sort of collective list of bullets, what in my experience, where the problems are. And it may not apply to everybody, but this is sort of the the most drastic list of issues that we've seen collectively peppered throughout the ecosystem. What sucks is that, especially in this economic climate, paying 100% of the price tag for 30% of the features. Again, approximately. But we've seen worse, we've seen better, we've seen 50, we've seen 20, we've seen 10% of usage. It's a little bit
I've
of a
been generally
madness.
on the 110% side. Use it all and then make your own things on top, but put it in the same box. That's also not great, to be honest.
Yeah, you're paying for that differently.
Yeah.
and it's getting expensive. I know that there is a SaaS versus PaaS sort of conversation, but a lot of these systems built in prior decades, they are PaaS trying to look like SaaS. So they're not as efficient. They're not using, just timing wise, they didn't have access to like serverless compute, to some of the new
Mhm.
database technologies. It
But
is
do you
just
think it might be time and place as well? Like if they started now, it would have been a completely different game using different tech that because right now you just use all these serverless things and things just scale up.
yeah,
While even 4 or 5 years ago, you had to go like, the more, I don't know, figure out the server cluster route yourself and deploy some customized packages on that. Even
yeah,
that short time ago, you had to do that, right?
yeah. And I know some will say Kubernetes is the answer. I'm not buying it. Like
I
it's
don't know. The Docker thing
overcomplication.
is awesome, but I almost feel like it was just built to say it works on my machine. Here's my Docker, go. I know that's a joke, but I've heard people say that like in real life.
Yeah, and I mean shoving huge monolithic services right into a container, that's never a good idea. If you have build a tiny service is one thing,
Yeah.
but this is really apples and oranges. But where it's all started happening, I think, where Jamstack came into picture, and React, and now Next.js taking over the world by storm. The developer experience expectations evolved so much
Mhm.
that, and the standard is so high. There's no way for any system that owns the rendering and dictates how to build websites, web apps, is gonna keep up, and it's just it's a game some vendors try playing, but it's always feels like something bolted on top, rather proper kind of properly designed modern
Yeah,
front end
exactly.
experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's just too hard. Like being a front end dev myself, in my career, I've gone over so many changes of what I like this time and then what I like that time and then what business dictates. Imagine you have certain needs that you have to be met, but out of the box, one of those DXP systems just doesn't give you the accessibility that you need. Then you're going to have to update their whole front end idea to make this accessibility need work. And then they do an upgrade, and then you are not going to do that upgrade because then you have to somehow hope there's no clashes between whatever their new front end things are and what you used. And then you're waiting, let's say 5 years, until you're like the cost of doing nothing has become too high and you just go greenfield. And I've
Exactly.
been in that situation and it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, because there's a lot you invested in, and just you know unplugging things immediately. It's not an option for many companies. The bigger you are, so yeah, it's not a great place to be. I mean, that being said, it may work for some. It's not a
It does. I
silver
don't
bullet.
think. No.
Hmm.
Well, what I think is interesting is to see like I've had projects that were large, like 100 sub brands in one huge platform, right? And their goals were to give all of these brands a voice. The quality of the output of the website didn't matter as much as long as they had their own voice and they had like a little page for their own brand. And then it was kind of fine to use whatever out of the box front end came and just use the multi tenant system in this DXP and do that really, really well. And so they gained process. And then, of course, in 2 years, they were all unhappy with their websites, but at least you had success in the short run, right? And it would have been a too big a challenge to go greenfield on that for them at that moment. And then you see them mature over time and they realize, oh, well, this front end didn't exactly fit, but at least we got successful in the eyes of our stakeholder. And then you
Hmm.
go to the next step. Had they have gone over all this like best of need stuff we keep talking about nowadays, the startup would have been a lot higher, a lot harder to do. But then they would be flying away after a year and choose whatever they want to choose
Hmm.
and then be super agile with it. And
Yeah.
then if people say, hey, can I get this feature? You just say, rather than maybe in 6 months, you'll say maybe next week. Or do you want it in 2 days? I can put that together, more clicks than code. And that's pretty interesting. But it's also very complicated to what to choose.
Yeah, and that's one of our missions at Uniform is to lower that barrier of entry
Yeah,
into composable. Though I think about it as Unix versus PC, Windows sort of approach, where you get everything from one vendor. In Windows, you get operating system with some photo editor and
yeah,
stuff like that. But you probably need to end up buying a couple of $100 pieces of software here and there. If you embrace, if you get Linux installed, you have full control over. You bring some open source goodness. You kind of assembling your own operating system in a way out of components that are great at what they do, right? And that's a
yeah,
philosophical choice, and it means that the barrier of entry is a little bit harder.
yeah.
But
It is for sure.
this is the mission we have to offset that and make it super straightforward to get started, assemble a stack, launch, and iterate. The key there is not just improve that initial getting started experience, but stay fast along the
Exactly.
way.
Don't code yourself into a corner. Because I just spoke to a friend of mine who was he's at an agency, and they said, yeah, we could have built a uniform, not as good, but we could have built it ourselves somehow. And I've done that in the past with certain projects. The thing is, though, when you look at uniform themselves, we actually productized the thing that everybody wanted to do and then built upon it based on the time and place we were with the right things with serverless and all that stuff. And so it's now more approachable to people who don't fully understand it or have the time at all to build something like that. Right? I've once had to hire 20 people and work for 2 years to get even close to what you get with uniform when you just buy and get started.
Yeah,
Right? That's a
it's a
pretty big
repeat
difference.
of 12, 15 years ago where everybody would build their own CMS, right?
Oh
Same sort
yeah,
of idea.
I've done
And
that. That was
we know
fun.
the cycles, right? We are old
Yeah.
enough to to remember those things. So yeah, it's very similar. And I remember a conversation we had with a big brand, automotive brand, and they build their own box. And they call it Blue Box, and they're like, "Can you guys take it? We don't want it anymore."
Yeah, yeah,
It's a multi
exactly.
CMS abstraction wrapper, and that's we've seen this happening. So that's our mission is to communicate that you don't want to become a product company unintentionally,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
you all
what
become
happens.
that. And then how does it work with upgrades, security patches, all that stuff? You don't want that at all.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's go back to the slide because I've been on a rampage for a sec.
No, that's good. That's good. We promise conversational, so
Oh,
people will
there you
get
go.
conversational. One important aspect, I think, here in composable architecture, we can see these blocks kind of start departing from being glued together. Is a That's what makes it truly composable architecture. That the multi-vendor aspect that you can easily plug in systems from companies that don't work together, don't integrate together. That's a good marker. Can you make um, a particular search provider work with another big suite company's DAM or CMS, right? That's a big marker. And that's reality in a lot of cases where you come into a customer, they are on Oracle Marketing Cloud, and that's it, right? Deal with it. So
Yes.
you want to make it work there. You come in there, and then they are on Adobe for the marketing layer, and so that's the reality of these enterprise customers, that there is a need for this sort of multi-vendor connectivity, and that's what makes it super hard. But the benefits are massive. Like it's just a different ball game in terms of the type of architecture you get, the
Yeah.
evolutionary architecture with that, right? Seeing this, one of the reasons why we started Uniform is seeing amount of waste in the space of millions thrown at upgrades just to keep upgrading without really moving the needle, right? Having rip and replace every 5 to 7 years, right? There's companies that went from Psycho to AEM back to Psycho, or
Oh,
the
I've been around that one too. It's crazy. But you know what's interesting here, and this is what not everybody who's technical like us thinks about, especially when you work at like an agency and then you say to your client or your customer, you know what, let's upgrade this version so everything else gets easier later. Sure, everybody kind of agrees you have to do that on a technical level. But then imagine you're a stakeholder and you are maybe chief information officer, or you're a CEO, or someone around there, and you pay for this thing, you the optics are really bad because you see a software upgrade, but you don't see an uptick in sales. You don't see an uptick in how it looks. It might get a bit faster, or certain things you get better, but those are metrics developers care about. And so going to upgrading and through all these things, make sure to keep the optics in mind of how it looks to other stakeholders, not just technical people. And then you suddenly start to realize how much money and time is being thrown at upgrading from CQ5 to AEM 6.2 or something. I've been around that one, where you almost saw no change at all, but the developers were happier. Well, after, not during. But the front end was the same or broken. And then
After
you had to
they had
have
to take
another,
vacation after this, right? Then
yeah,
they
and
had.
then another 6 months to fix bugs. That doesn't look particularly good to the stakeholders that have paid for it. And so there's always this balance to be found. And I'm not saying that's super easy with composable, but at least the chunks you are attacking are a lot smaller. Right? That makes these
Huh?
things easier.
You can move incrementally. You can have more of an evolutionary approach to
Yeah.
architecture changes. And what we often talk about is that you have sort of this insurance policy against any major events, shifts in the market, or vendor becoming hostile and jacking up the prices, right? This is a lot more friendlier to a customer sort of architecture. And another side effect that I think we don't talk enough about is talent pool access and being more efficient by maximizing the use of front end experts that they don't need much to know. They don't need to be trained with a particular flavor of the front end and know how do you work with this concrete CMS or DXP, right? You can parallelize backend API development front end. It just makes you a lot more efficient with the resources you have. And it's all about that, doing more more with less these days.
Yeah. And I've had the most fun experience where I won't name clients or vendors, but the people who know me and watch this know what I'm talking about. But we actually, this is a project, Alex, you and I worked on before Uniform.
All
So
right.
where this vendor became hybrid headless, right? So you would be able to work at Next.js, and then you can work locally on your MacBook. You didn't need .NET or Java or whatever, right? And so you can then later on connect. And that's a really cool idea to still have that front end experience where you can just do all the things, build an amazing Next or Nuxt app, and then later on connect it to this backend, and they can still do the fancy CMS, the inline editing, and everything because they had a Node.js layer in between. That it was kind of complicated, but it did work. And then it happened where we just threw this project at a really good React developer. But then you notice that these developers have different minds. So React developers, if you know React a little bit, you know that they're really granular when it comes to components. Everything is a component, and you can really do amazing things. And this system worked with kind of slots or places where you can inject components into. And of course, these React developers made like hundreds of these on one page. But the CMS from back in the day, they were like maybe 2 or 3, and then performance is cool. And we started to build this amazing front end with hundreds of these placement spots where you could put components in. And then the performance was horrific. And we didn't understand because we took a front end approach to it, which means hybrid headless is not actually headless at all because you need to know exactly how the system works behind it. And if you do, you're cool. But then you have the problem with the talent pool again. Because you cannot just hire any amazing freelancer to just build you a front end. No, you need to have a specialist that understands that DXP and is really good at building a front end. They're going to be 1,000 a day, maybe more, right? And there's not that many of them. And so, yeah, it's always kind of fun to see how that works.
No, exactly. And atomic design principles are also quite important no matter what you do. I know there is a React way of thinking about it, but it's the atomic design principle that's always a missing link in React developers' head, and that should be a
That's
part of.
true, though. Yeah. So I'm not saying that approach to building front end is great. Like I'm coming from the Vue.js world where we do a lot less of that. I'm not saying it's better. It's just there are different flavors. And if you build a DXP that you say, hey, this is headless, so you can do whatever you want to do in the front end, make sure you can deal with the flavors.
Yeah. And we are at the point, this is a very exciting time where it's not just theory. We actually have documented successes, huge successes
Yes, we do.
with this approach of migration to composable. And this is one example. That I have a couple of quotes from this North American insurance company, and just the best of breed, the freeing experience and the acceleration. You double the speed for your second site. That's huge. Like that's where we wanted to be. That was the we've been talking about it, for a while. Like you invest once and then get faster. Now we have the proof points that this actually is working, and it's extremely exciting. We're gonna get this one published so you can learn a lot more about this case study. But this is one of my favorite one because it kind of talks about performance. And Lighthouse Core Web Vitals talks about fast time to market, and yeah, it's just amazing. And we were part of this mental transformation, and working together with the team to get to composable way of thinking, as well as getting things shipped. So super exciting stuff.
I think what we do need to mention here, though, is like if you just go from legacy to composable, you're not going to just gain 30 points in Lighthouse course, right? You need to know what you're doing still. So
Yeah.
that's why we're always quite close because it's not just the concept of changing that's better. You actually have to know what you're doing, and then it can just be exponentially better, I guess. Or maybe that's a big word, but if you have more freedom, you can hire better people that know what to do with that freedom, and suddenly you can get much better results faster. I think that's a part of this, however.
It's a really good point. You can mess up like a Hello World Next.js app if you really try. I think
Oh,
that will be
yeah.
a good live stream to see how low we can go with some best practices, right?
Oh,
So
that's true. But I
it's
know
nothing
people
is
that are
guaranteed. However,
exactly.
the reinvestment of you used to spend time in dealing with plumbing, troubleshooting your Docker container, and dealing with the internals that you didn't want to deal with. All of that time can be reallocated to treat performance first and
Yep.
actually invest in performance. You have a lot more tooling at your disposal to play with. It's sort of like that moment when you use better tools and you become a better engineer in a way, and the tooling framework kind of steers you towards that. It's awesome. I think there's been too many abstractions from the web from the past, and it was just things may get sideways without your intent. Now you need to have that intent as a part of the process, and this means that you have a lot more time and control over great performance metrics.
Yeah, exactly.
But the big question, how do we get there? When we talk about it, we talk about an express train, which is rip and replace and just start over greenfield, and we have tools to get you there faster. But that's a commitment you have. Okay, we need we need to rebuild. Sometimes there is no option, uh, but we talk a lot more about the local train experience, right? And this is beautiful train in Swiss Alps that you can take. It's a bit slower, but you take it on your own. So you can plan your own journey. You can stop at some beautiful villages and explore beautiful waterfalls and stuff like that. So this is this may be a better option for a lot of companies we talk with, and so this is
Yeah.
where we kind
Sorry to
of get
break in, but I think that's really important because when you look at uniform, sometimes people think, hey, so I always have to do greenfield for this. But nothing is further from that. It's so flexible that the whole point is to just inject it small first and then peel the onion and see how far you can go. So that was a lucky move to this slide. Thanks.
there we go. So how do we peel the onion? Well, here we can see blocks being kind of disassembled one by one. Last live stream, we talked about the hosting deployment, being able to connect to your existing CMSDXP or using Sitecore and deploy to Vercel. straight away. So turning it instantly headless. So you're immediately moving off all the concerns about hosting, deployment, CI/CD, all of that experience out of into the modern era, right? So that's great. So we kind
So
of check that
devil's
off.
advocate here.
Hmm.
Sidecore XM does that exactly. What is
Hmm.
different?
What it is difference? Our story, we can do it with any version of Sitecore. It
Hmm.
can be on-prem version. It could be MVC version. It can be React or Nuxt based front end that talks to a 10-year-old instance, right? So we don't have to touch or upgrade anything inside of your Sitecore instance. So
Okay.
that's, I think, one of the most fundamental principles. And there is no need to, if you own old license, perpetual license, you can keep that. So you don't have to move to consumption to kind of get these benefits.
And you can also just kill your CD servers, but I guess in Sidecore XM that's the same, right?
Yeah, I think there's a replacement for CD server.
Okay.
I think there is a larger view here to consider, because in composable architecture, where it gets even more compelling, where you start thinking about decoupling other pieces and you becoming a multi-source
Yeah.
architecture, right? Where we used to shove everything into CMS, your product catalog, right? Your search was running here, your DAM or quasi DAM was sort of there. It was never enough, because that world has been evolving as well. We just played with Cloudinary's new AI generative fill
Oh
capabilities,
yeah,
and
it's
that
so
blew my
cool.
mind, right?
Yeah, I'm about to make a video on it because it's it's not fully there, but it's so insane.
It's so good. I tried it like on 10 images. I was blown away. So that's an example of you can access these sort of innovations if you use fit
Yeah,
for
you'd
purpose
never
tooling,
get that
right?
in a DXP because I've looked at the like even Adobe's DAM that's really advanced, right? They don't actually do proper delivery stuff at all. So if you wanted that, you would still have to go elsewhere. And then in Sidecore, they do have delivery stuff, but when we looked in that code properly, it's actually like I don't know, they call it like image magic from like 2008 or 9 or something. Yeah, that's not gonna compare to anything that you would choose that's best of breed. Right? It's just not worth it.
Again, this is that philosophical commitment as an architect you need to make. Like, we are using best of breed, best of need, and that's sort of how you roll. And then this sort of content, and this just becomes a part of the puzzle. But there is a lot more puzzle for you to kind of wrangle, right? So I think the where it gets really interesting is within these experience and content layer. What do you do with those? So I want to talk a little bit more about that, starting with experience presentation layer. So we're gonna need an example, and for an example, we can use the our most familiar DXP and presentation experience from layer from there. So this should be familiar to some, and this translates. The more I learn about other technologies of the same decade, this roughly translates to their approach, because
I
everybody's
think
been using
Sidecore
similar approach.
is number one in it though. I think they have managed to separate these things out really well. Where in Adobe it almost feels a little bit more like just a bucket of files that you have to make dynamic,
Hmm.
which is fine in a way because for scaling it works very well. But when you look at Sidecore, really they do have like this whole data template approach where you
Hmm.
can it's really nicely separated. I think that they deserve props for
Yeah.
that for sure.
Yeah, logically, it's really nicely
It's
separated. Here,
crazy good.
we're talking
Exactly.
about physical separation, right,
Yeah. Okay.
of these things. So then you have a question to ask. Once you transition to this composable architecture, is headless CMS really the right place for your renderings, placeholders, layout details, page level items, etc.? And there's another question for you, Tim.
I would
So
say no to all
there's
of
an
them. Sorry, but I might be ahead of time. Oh yeah,
yeah.
there we go.
No.
Exactly. That was a big no in my brain. But I might be too idealistic, right? What do you think?
I think I mean, you can do anything in technology. It's a bad idea. We've seen, folks try. The moment you can model anything in a headless CMS, but it
True.
always feels like okay, that's bolted on top. That's some architect's idea of how this should be architected. So
Yes.
when business user come in, they're like, okay, where's my stuff? Where's my page? Where's my, you can have, if you have a super simple scenario with like 3 stacked components, you can model a component. It's, if you in like super simple landing page scenario, but things get complex when you need to have more advanced layout control, right? You
Yeah.
have visual representation of that, not just in content objects and content entries. Yes, you can do it. I've seen this go really bad. And CMS, headless CMS was not designed for that. So we're not
No, true.
really, right? We need to acknowledge the original intent and design of headless CMS. And
Well, it's
yes,
just
some of them have
different,
components, but
right?
it's never
It's just
it's
a
never first
different
class.
thing, and people need to somehow get to grips with that. But I don't know. Like I've seen, I talked about this in the stream 2 days ago with Mark and Dina, where essentially we built this glorious thing for the developers. We loved it. It was a data model to make on a product page. We had 4 tabs with product details. Like tab 1 had a specific content, tab 2 could have content, and each
Mhm.
tab could have a title, but it also had like a placeholder and anything can go in there. And it was really, it was magical. And then a content editor started with this, where we sold them this whole amazing thing. And it took them 30 minutes to make one item of 4 tabs. And they had 400 pages. And so, yeah, what do you do then? Do you come back from that idyllic horse you were on? Or like, and so this is just to illustrate that even if these things don't fit in headless CMSs, doing it in a way where it's idealistic in a headless CMS might also cause 20 minutes of work for something that's 1 minute when you do it in a way like how Uniform would attack it, for example.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Once you
it's
bring that
just hard.
empathy to the business user, right, that marketer, that somebody needs to use this day to day, right? You may think like it's easy for you as a developer, but they come from a very different world. They may switch from CMS to CMS in a large company. They, you know, you can have multiple agencies working with different spaces, and then the different architects involved. So their version of this reality may be very different. So
Yeah.
this can get really messy, and it just doesn't scale. So this builds up for proper first class capability, and this is one of the things that we do really well at Uniform. I think this sort of encodes the upgraded. It's kind of flying like business class overseas or first class in US, but mostly if you ever flown Emirates business class, I had pleasure once, and that's one of the best experience of my life.
Oh
It
boy.
was expense trip, so but I mean that going back to economy, right? That's kind of how it feels like when you deal with a feature that's, you know, it's built with different intent. Yeah, you can fly, you know, 15 hours. I've flown to Australia for 14 hours. My back still hurts. That was three
Oh,
years
it's
ago.
so nice. From where you are, it's only 14. For me, it's like 30.
Yeah, for you,
Anyways,
I don't even know how you get out of
yeah,
that
we just had to
area.
fly to Hong Kong and then have an 8-hour layover and then fly to Perth. It's horrific.
Wow.
Anyways, that's another
So
story.
that's just a mental model to think about
Yeah.
once you get to working. But the question is, how do you get all of the investments that you put in into your DXP presentation experience layer, and how do you decouple that? So talk about headless CMS as an option. With Uniform, this is another option, and then we give a couple of pieces here to think about. There is an automated migration approach, semi-automated, where you can kind of cherry pick what you actually want to salvage and transfer over, and completely manual, where you can recreate the components and presentation definitions to power your pages. The beauty is that after that, it's connect your front end of choice, Next, Gatsby, whatever, right? Remix, Astro, some interesting options emerging. And then, you know, go have fun. The data is there. You have managed pages, and you can go pretty much fast from there. I kind of just to visualize it. I wanted to show you how this could look like, and
Yeah, I was just going to say, within our time frame, this might be the perfect moment to actually show it.
Yeah, exactly. So in uniform, I'm going to show you an empty project here that doesn't have anything, no components, no compositions, no
Do we need to
pages.
go over the basics and the glossary of uniform, or do you just want to show the magic and then go into it?
I think we'll just show the magic. So think about, you have an empty space where you need this presentation experience layer to live, right? The content will still reside in your content storage of choice, your CMS of choice, whether it's headless or whether it's legacy system, whatever. This is about the layer on top, right? So for that, I'm gonna run. We're gonna use Psycore as an example here, but this could be AEM or any other DXP that has this notion of presentation components.
So this is Sidecore 10, I think, looking at your URL.
This is Psycho 10 without using any Psycho 10 features. So this could be Psycho 8.
Okay.
It's just it's easier to install 10.
I think
But
my most formidable years were 8.2. I did 6 before, but then it was like all the code behind it was a bit messy. And in 8.2, it became smooth, I feel, for me.
yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to take all these pages and all the presentation settings, and we will convert and move them to uniform. So
what is
we're going to
this?
use some
Is this a
ugly
uniform
tooling.
thing?
This is a uniform connector that gets installed, and it gets you some migration tooling.
Ah, cool.
So here,
okay. So you do have to install something.
Yeah. So that's this connector that is doing some magic in extraction transformation. So here I ran push, and at the end I should get all of my components imported here inside
that
of my
already
project.
worked?
It's automatic. Right. There we go. So you can see.
Oh, you see them come in. Holy crap.
They're coming in.
This is the magic of having our backend in React, where if data just changes, your interface just updates, no refreshes, nothing. It's crazy. I love this.
So once we have the components, the only thing we're missing is pages. And for that, I'm gonna make sure this page is alive. Run serialization, so it will serialize everything on disk and then pushes this into my project.
Is this the serialization making these pages go into like a JSON format or like a YML format or something?
Yeah, I think it's just JSON files, maybe YAML files. I'm not sure, to be honest, but files on disk that will be converted, and you can see now we have all the compositions. So these are compositions for your pages. These are your layout details that get propagated and manifested here. And together with that, we have a content tree. And this is our project map.
So this was just created out of the Sidecore project you were running?
Yeah, exactly. So it gets wilder if I go and open up this page in Canvas. You can see...
You haven't set a preview yet, I guess.
That's not a problem. So I'm going to start it up locally here. And this is an Next.js app that's running here. This could be Nuxt. This could be any front-end tech. It already implemented the front-end in React. So all it needs is data.
So this is your little project in React that you want the front-end to be like. You just have to connect to Uniform to get the right data into these components, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm going to paste the localhost preview. And then hopefully in a little bit of time, maybe. Let's see, is it up?
Well, is it running? Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, you get an API client error, it seems.
Yeah, let me check. Looks like I'm not using the right project ID or something. Let me see.
This is the beauty of live streaming. We're living on the edge.
Living on the edge.
Oh, yeah, you need to have the proper project ID. Oh, yeah, okay, I saw that. Too late, though.
Yeah.
And by the way, people, you can copy these things. They're only read API keys. No worries here.
Yeah.
Okay, so something is not fully there.
Doesn't like the project map, even though I think the API key may not be good.
You could just create a new API key for this project and paste it in, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So let me do that.
Yeah, this is the beauty of us knowing the product so well. It's relatively easy to solve online.
I hope this is it.
Oh, yeah. Otherwise, we have a bad moment.
And it worked for me yesterday,
Of course.
as always. I think I haven't updated this API key. I think. Let me see. Magical moment. There we go. It was the
Okay,
right
so it
API.
was just API key writes for reading.
All right. Then, where is my uniform project? Let me get back to that and just go and refresh my project. My empty project. That's not empty anymore.
No, exactly. Here we go. So this
And
is a representation of Habitat, essentially, that we created. And now it's running on localhost, but it also goes to preview mode through the Uniform SDK now. So did you literally just spend time to make a React version of Habitat? That's from like 2007.
we have to do some weird things here.
Oh my
Tim. Yeah.
God.
What?
Including like that crazy accessibility red over dark blue thing. You just copied that. I love it, man.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see this, but here we go.
And the thing is that it retains the references to your original content in Cycor.
Yeah,
So
of
if I
course.
install the integration, I'll be able to pick different pieces of
Okay, so this
content.
is interesting. This is good to know. So you just copied this into Uniform, and the data sources are there, but we didn't install the Sidecore integration. So if you wanted to change a data source now, you just have to put another UUID in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not exactly a fun thing to do, but maybe we can just install the integration.
Yeah, then if you install the integration, it will get you the nice picker, nice UI, and everything.
Do
So
we
that's
want to show that? I think it might be good for people, depending on
do we have
your.
time.
Yeah. I don't know
Oh,
if it's hard to do. I imagine it's not too
no,
crazy.
it's not. It's not at all. It's only just
But
want to
we
make
said we want
sure.
to show magic, right? And magic is not a UUID.
Exactly. Okay. 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 I get it. I get it. Let's do it. So I'm gonna need
I'm now pushing
some.
my CTO to the max. I'll hear about this tonight.
That's okay. So let's install the integration. All we need for the integration is to know which endpoint to talk to. Um, so I'm tunneling here through ngrok and get the API key from Cycor and which site I want to connect to. Test connection, it's successful. Boom, done, ready to go. And we can now go back to our home page, and you can see now instead
Holy
of
moly.
GUIDs,
Is that okay? That's too easy.
and we now have ability to query the whole Cycor content tree and keep picking the data source items from existing systems. So essentially, could be a phase one. You decouple the whole front end presentation layer, and then what you have there left is content, right? And dealing with content here, there could be a couple of options, but we kind of reduce the dependency to data templates, content items. So you can keep using headless CMS for that. You can keep using existing system, or you can move this into a headless CMS, either headless CMS, whatever you feel like. But this becomes a more of a universal bridge between.
Yeah, I think it's important to tell people that integration we just installed, right? The sidecore thing. Oh, that's a nice picture, by the way. We have integrations to any CMS like that. So if you decided to move your data models from Sidecore into another CMS like Contentful or Content Stack, it also just connects like into Uniform just like that. And even if we don't have an integration, we have data sources. So it's literally just it's like Postman in Uniform. You can put any URL in there that's a REST API or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of notes here. When to migrate, and senior developer answer, it depends. It depends
Yeah.
on how coupled you are to your content layer. Is there anything else that built on top of that, or this is just used for website content? And that really is very much solution specific. But the beauty here is that once you're ready and have the need, it becomes a lot more achievable because you already modernize the customer facing portion of your stack, and it becomes less mission critical to work your way back, downwards, right? The question is always what is salvageable. If your content models, you're happy with them, great. There could be, again, automatic, semi-automatic, manual migration, and you can start piecemeal or move the whole content repository, right? So we've done these assessments for many folks. So if you in doubt want to have a no strings attached sort of assessment, happy to help. But this is from eight considerations from my personal experience of what you think about when you attempt something like that. And this is typically de-risked and discovered during phase 0 pilot. Right, is figuring out how clean is your content model. If you're happy with the results in the headless CMS, if you attempt this migration, what kind of other dependencies you have. Where does the media go? Like, media is often treated as content. Does it make sense to consider a fit for purpose DAM or versus headless CMS? All the questions. There could be different questions, different answers. Rich text editor could be a fun one because most of headless CMS have a strongly typed kind of JSON based rich text editor that is not really text. So there's some interesting transformation you need to think about. Linking, like where the page is going to be managed, how you're going to transform these internal links, some fields, complex fields, custom fields, and yeah, whatever automated solution you put together. What we've learned over this decade is that it needs to be moldable, extensible, and open, because you cannot really program one approach. So these are the things to keep in mind. We have a ton of experience with that. So if you want to pick our brain, you know how to reach us. And yeah, with that in mind, looking at the time, I think
Oh,
we are
perfect, dude. Perfect.
wrapping it up here. So in upcoming live streams, we want to talk more around more purple boxes here, or maybe Barbie pink. I don't know. That seems to be a thing now. So we want to talk about search forms in mid-August, and other a live stream. There's a lot to talk about forms and how to handle that, how to decouple that from CMS, and we can look into new cool services that handle forms really well, front-end libraries, and how to approach this in general. There's multiple things to consider. Search is a big topic, and I mentioned commerce. I'd love to pull in an expert in commerce migration. We can talk about that as well, and DAM too. So a lot of new boxes to talk a lot about, and hopefully this will be a continuous theme, and we'll be able to share more how-tos and how to decouple and decompose your whole monolith.
Exactly. And what's really interesting here is that you can actually do all this stuff while keeping your site or Adobe or whatever you use, your API server, in play, because your content editors might have been trained on that. But you can then just swap out certain things and have your front end super modern, and then have this uniform thing in between, and you choose how much you do. Right. And
That's very important. Yeah,
that's actually one of the more important things, because in my career, when I wasn't at Uniform but before, my success was generally about the optics of how does it look when we move from the old school stuff to the new school stuff. Are we going to spend 2 years and then do a big bang release and hope it all works? Or, because that also includes training people, agencies have to understand the new thing, writing documentation. What if you can just do small chunks, right? And then let it all still sit and have your production architecture in place while using the old stuff. And over time, when you have the time, then you move these things around, but you always take care of the optics. Like, I've even had projects where we updated the design of the legacy website and then build the new website at the same design. And then we would literally just swap component by component or page by page. And in a year, they saw changes every 2 weeks, every sprint release. But then it took a year to then slowly move everybody. It's like literally taking your client by the hand.
Yep.
And I think that's a really important part, and Uniform plays a big role there. So sorry for the pitch, but I wish I had Uniform back then, because that would have helped us so much.
Yeah, no, that's the reason why presentation experience layer needs to be first. Once you decouple that, you're becoming multi-source. This means that you can bring another content source, and because your app becomes, if you use uniform mesh, becomes unaware where the content is coming from.
Yeah, doesn't
And
care.
this means that you can do component by component migration without making any code changes. It becomes kind of content remapping exercise. What's fun about it is that in the last 5 years we've been doing this, we actually helped a couple of cycle customers extend the lifetime of their investment. So they were looking at multiple options, by handling this sort of front end modernization and composability. It kind of diffuses the situation in a lot of ways. You become less
Definitely.
coupled, and you can extend the lifetime of what you've invested over a past decade. And we all about that. This is how you do this in a sustainable way. And
Yeah,
yeah,
we have a
we're happy
ton
to
of
help.
information, right? You can go to our website or just go to our YouTube channel and you'll see, because we just said the word uniform mesh. If you want to know what that is, how it all works, you can just go to our channel and then watch the videos. I just looked back and I think I made like 92 videos about all that stuff. And so we still have a whole bunch of people watching, which is excellent. We love that. Why don't we do a little experiment? Do people have questions? You want to maybe put that in the chat right now while we're still here? Because if you're still here after an hour, you're probably interested. Otherwise, why look at our two faces, right? So, is there
Exactly.
anything you want to ask, or maybe you don't agree, which is totally fine because we are not claiming to be all knowing about all these systems, right? Because I know there's like an Adobe hybrid CMS and they do all these amazing things. Maybe we've missed something. If there's anything, feel free to add. If
Or
not,
a
of
box
course,
we
we're fine.
missed, maybe a use case,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And it's sort of it's built from sort of collective memory, sometimes painful, but maybe there is a couple of boxes we missed. We'd love to add them to the chart. It will make it more
Exactly.
impressive. So,
While we wait for that, we do have this, which is interesting. So we have a composable CMS evaluation guide that we brought out a while back. And so Mark Damany and I, and we've been doing live streams about how to actually, okay, so you have your old system, you want to go to a new one, or you are already in a modern composable system, but you somehow want to change something out, but you don't know how to do that. So we've built you or written an evaluation guide, and we're doing 2 streams a week now where we talk about subjects and go in depth there. So while you wait here and while we might get some comments or not, um, feel free to have a look at that because that's actually a pretty interesting thing also. And because we go super deep into, okay, what does content modeling mean? Or like tomorrow we have a live stream about, okay, so you have a headless CMS. What do you have to pay attention for its SDK? Like, what does that matter? And how does that compare? Like, do I still need that SDK if I choose uniform, for example? And so there's lots of stuff this is interesting about. Is cool. Anyways, we don't seem to be getting the comments. However, we see the people still watching. Alex, is there a little anecdote you wanted to share, or we call it a day?
I think it's a wrap. I think
It is.
there's been plenty of content. Hopefully this was useful, but yeah, please do let us know if the depth was okay. We need to go deeper. We can adjust these live streams in mid-flight if we wanted to.
Oh, totally.
But
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining, spending your precious Thursday, probably day, evening, afternoon. So we appreciate that.
Cheers, everyone. See you next time. Bye bye.
Cheers. Bye.